Oh, that's great. That's great. Therefore, I will surmise that for you going up the ladder or the hierarchy of the party to the NEC to be the second most powerful man in ZAPU, that is being the Secretary General, was promotion. And I'm wondering, because what I have heard is that ZAPU didn't really grow as people had expected. So what were the challenges compared to the UK province and the ZAPU as a whole?
The many challenges. The Zimbabwean situation has transformed from what used to be and from what exists in other parts of the world. The transformation has been the deliberate, actually impoverishment, just the basic needs of the Zimbabwean population have been so eroded by the powers that be that people would actually sort of engage in what they call the politics of the stomach. What it is, and in fact I met it when I was going out campaigning for the party, where the people would say to me, we really in our hearts love this party. Kodwa lina lizasiphani. That unfortunately is what actually plays out in the country, because the people are so needy that their voting is actually really directed by the immediate gain. But that is only a temporary thing. I think people are going to see through that those people that give them something, they give them only at the time of elections, and in the interregnum, people are left to fend for themselves. Yes, of course, that was something that I perceived a lot, and I went right across the country and everybody was saying exactly the same. But my hopes are very much limited, sort of not limited, but actually sort of very much raised now. When I interact with people, people are seeing through that. In fact, they know now that whatever is given to them by the party in government at the moment was theirs in the first instance. They don't have to be given. It is something that they've got to reach out and get for themselves. And there is a real transformation which actually sort of gives me a lot of hope for ZAPU. And on the ground, I actually sort of am linked enough on the ground to see it happen. People are saying, we've seen enough of these people that bribe us to vote by giving us what is ours, and the transformation for ZAPU on the ground is real. Now, the reason also is that ZAPU is maybe the only party that believes in not giving people something that is perishable, but empowering people to actually sort of use what is theirs. And all the policies of the party are actually in gearing people to grab what is theirs, the resources, and therefore they don't have to extend a begging hand to anybody else. It's time for ZAPU now.
That's very interesting. However, today I would like us to focus on something. Of course, we will touch ZAPU here and there. I hope one day we will have appropriate time just to talk about ZAPU and your work in ZAPU. But today I would like us to talk more about the gukurahundi genocide. I know that ZAPU, or the supporters of ZAPU, were also targeted by this genocide. we know that currently there are some efforts spearheaded by the president of Zimbabwe right now, who is President Emerson Mnangagwa. He's been in Matabeleland to meet civic organizations. I understand it's a collection of Matabeleland organizations. It's called Matabeleland Collective. So today I would like us to focus on that. But before that, what is your view regarding gukurahundi? What do you think was the purpose of gukurahundi, and what are the outcomes of gukurahundi?
Let me correct one thing in your question.
Mm-hmm.
When you said ZAPU was also targeted, no. ZAPU was the primary target of gukurahundi.
Mm-hmm.
Now, there are people that actually sort of look on the surface and say, yes, it was actually to establish a one-party state. Gukurahundi was not actually factioned or thought about in 1980.
Mm-hmm.
Gukurahundi, for people that actually saw it coming, stretches back to the Morogoro, to the Mgagao, whatever. There were two driving forces behind gukurahundi. The first was the false narrative. I went to school in Mashonaland myself, and I knew it all the way back to the 70s, that there was that actually sort of boiling under the surface. The minority regime had sown into the heads of the people of a lot what we call Mashonaland, that there was Mazriti, there were the Ndebelés that massacred their forebearers. And therefore, couched in ZANU, that's how ZANU grew. ZANU grew on the basis that it became a party to right a wrong that never happened. So that was the basis of gukurahundi. The second, and it was a misconception, the misconception that ZAPU was seen as a Ndebele supported party. Now, if you look at the composition of the leadership of ZAPU, that was totally untrue. And therefore, you had the people that were sitting here in Britain, here in London, crafting as early as 1976, 1977. I was here, and because I could actually swim in the crowd that were actually talking about these things, I could hear, I knew that there was an undercurrent of something of a great disaster. And unfortunately, so it was a minority voice. I was at a place called Cascade Center when Robert Mugabe, when he was asked about what it is that they were going to do to the white regime. We're not actually racist ourselves, but the question was what they were going to do to the white regime that had sort of brought so much suffering. Robert Mugabe said, yes, we'll start off with the white people, but mandevere tichaona later. So, what was the basis of gukurahundi? It was, first of all, of course, the hatred that had been engineered by the settlers to actually divide the people into what was actually called the Ndebelés and the Shonas, because it was good, you divide, you rule. And the second thing is, of course, that played a part that Robert Mugabe wanted to be the sole ruler of Zimbabwe, and ZANU to be the only party that had anything to do with the future of the country. And therefore, as perceived at the time, ZAPU was the only challenge to that, and the people suffered as a consequence. Now, I don't want to actually sort of give you too lengthy an answer, but people must not look at gukurahundi as something that was captured in the 5 years between 1982 and 1987. Gukurahundi existed in the preparation before the actual genocide happened, and gukurahundi continues to today. It is a process, it has phases, and now the phase that it is at is as dangerous and as insidious as could be, because people are still suffering greatly under the effects of gukurahundi.
Okay, so do you regard gukurahundi as a genocide? And if so, why?
Of course.
Why?
I will plug something for people that actually perhaps don't visit the ZAP website. I've defined what actually goes for genocide. And by all aspects of what was defined in 1949, gukurahundi was genocide. Gukurahundi was genocide because it targeted a people. To actually, for a special trick, just like we had the Jews actually suffering because they were Jews. What gukurahundi did is that whether it targeted the people on the basis of political affiliation, whether it targeted the people on the basis of their tribe, and what it then actually, the genocide also is actually defined in the fact that the after effects are felt. It's not just a simple sort of murder, like somebody actually kills somebody, whether it is premeditated or not. It is something that is meant to actually have an effect that lasts and lasts a very long time. Now, you have people that, if I just were to be graphic about it, people, sort of women, pregnant women with their sort of bellies ripped open to just actually kill even their innocence just because of the way that they belonged. I do not want our interview to actually sort of focus or to dwell too much on something that is unarguably genocide, and I would say for those that contest it,
but some people are saying it wasn't a genocide, it was a civil war.
Well, anybody who asks that, it is their head examined, to be honest with you. Now, what civil war is there when only one side is doing the shooting? What civil war is there when people are just actually sort of herded into huts and sort of burnt? They got no guns, they're not fighting back. What civil war leads to school children being taken and actually thrown in mine shafts? What civil war is it that actually sort of gets people to be taken and to eat the flesh of unborn babies? It's just a civil war. Anybody that actually sort of comes up with something like that, just absolutely, they actually sort of don't know. They haven't got an argument.
But they say at that time, Dr. Joshua Mguni, the leader of ZAPU at that time, had dissidents. So he had armed people, according to what other people say. So they were fighting against armed people.
Okay. A war has got battles, noted battles. I would need one person to go and actually cite an example where there was an exchange between armed people. There are things, and they've been proven now. First of all, of course, like in any country, there was banditry. If you've got somebody, a madman, shooting people, you do not actually bring an army to wipe out the people in that locality. Joshua Mguni and Dubiso Dabengwa and all those people, there was court cases that proved that they had nothing to do with it. And if you read a book by Stuart Doran, you will actually identify who the dissidents were. And that is what put the people in the most unenviable position. It was people that were actually planted to go and actually masquerade as dissidents against the government. It was
planted by who?
by the government itself. And it was something that was done in cooperation with the South African forces who wanted to sow discord in the country. And in fact, even the current ZANU government will not deny that the people that they called dissidents were people that they planted themselves. They wanted to find a reason to go and teach the people of that area a lesson. And they had to do. We know it is now out in the open. Now, I go back to actually saying, you are talking about civil war. A war is something that is actually fought between combatants, two sort of combatants. A war is not a wanton Turkish shoot of just unarmed civilians, which is what gukurahundi was.
Okay. Yeah, that's very interesting. I know this is a very difficult topic. As I said, the current president is trying to deal or to resolve this issue of genocide, as you have stated that gukurahundi was a genocide, or is a genocide, because you said it is still ongoing. You know, he has gone to Bulawayo to meet the Matabeleland collective. What is your view on his efforts?
Well, the thing is that as Minister of State Security, as Minister of Security, so whatever the word, the designation was, he was in charge. He was the person that was almost at the command of what was happening in Matabeleland. Now, you can't have somebody, even if you say it's just an allegation, if it is alleged that he was involved in the genocide, there's no way that he would have any right to be supervising of a crime that he is actually sort of implicated in. So he should be nowhere near the process of being a person trying to solve a crime that he knows he committed. In fact, I am actually encouraged by a document that I have that's preceding, I'll come back to the Matabeleland collective in a bit. Now, the chiefs themselves said the only solution of what happened, the genocide, is for a proper judicial process. And during that judicial process, Nangagwa, who was in charge of what happened, should be in jail. That is the starting position for the people to start to feel that it is a serious effort to resolve what was a total tragedy in our country.
I do understand what you are saying. Sorry to disturb you, but this is very important. This man is the president now. Yes, maybe he was in state security or whatever minister at that time. For the way forward, we know that this thing has to be resolved in one way or the other. However, if you say he has to be in prison, how is it going to work?
Okay. Now, what we say is that when you are serious about resolving gukurahundi, you will have to have somebody who's completely impartial supervising. There is no point, however dark the ink, there is nothing that's going to erase the pain of gukurahundi when the main culprit, whether he be president, whatever method you got to actually get into there. By the way, the genocide declaration by the United Nations, it actually says that whatever level, whatever office the person that committed genocide is, that person must be apprehended. And what we are saying is that the first stage to that is to actually bring the names of the people that were involved in genocide and actually put it to every country that when he lands, or those people that land, that actually were involved, they land in any country that is a signatory to the United Nations Charter, should actually have the duty to arrest them. Now, there is no way that you can sweep genocide under the carpet. There is no, because for it to be resolved, it is got to be resolved to the satisfaction of the people, if I can put it to satisfaction, but at least for them to know that justice has been done, of the people that are suffering under it. There's no point in signing something that's not going to actually last, because it's a time bomb. If Zimbabwe doesn't deal with it properly, there will be an eruption that will make places like Rwanda, where there was actually sort of tribal or whatever group warfare, look like child's play. So that person, president or not, if you have committed genocide, you have no right to be at the helm of any country. So it is then that actually sort of almost portrays him as an illegitimate president.
That brings us to a question that I would like to ask about ZAPU in this genocide and in its resolution. As ZAPU, what do you think needs to be done in order for this thing to be resolved once and for all?
Okay, the ZAPU policy at the moment, or the ZAPU sort of negotiating position, is very clear. For Zimbabwe to transition to something that is going to be stability, we need what is called a National Transition Authority. A National Transition Authority has got an element of transitional justice. The transitional justice is not just a mere truth and reconciliation. There have got to be prosecutions. A crime was sort of committed. I say to people, if you go and you kill somebody with intent, you've done for murder. In a lot of countries, you do porridge, you will be in jail for the rest of your life. In other countries, you pay for a life with a life. Now, there are people that in a most ridiculous way are going around and say, okay, so he was responsible. He's got to apologize. What? Apologize for a mass murder? Are we idiots or what? Anybody who actually sort of says an apology will resolve gukurahundi hasn't started thinking. He could actually satisfy a few of the people.
What's wrong with an apology?
There's nothing wrong with an apology. An apology comes after the person has actually sort of faced the justice. And what absolutely infuriates me is that the people, some of the people that call themselves representing the victims, are begging the person to apologize. When you apologize, you don't wait for people to ask you to apologize. You say, I know I'm culpable. You ask Mnangagwa and you say, what do you think about... He's not just saying, I've set up a PRC to do the work for him. If you really know that you've done something wrong, you don't wait for people to petition you to apologize. The apology that people are going to get is one where Mnangagwa is going to be possibly, to save his skin, might end up saying, oh yes, so I apologize. And you say, but I'm not satisfied. He said, God, I said I've apologized, what next you want, and you are also in danger of being shot. We are being idiotic by sort of trying to say, apologize and it's over. I lost some dear ones, and I'm one of those people, and I'm quite prepared to die with them, who will not accept an apology. Somebody has committed a crime, let them face justice. At the end of that justice, when justice is done, maybe I might be sympathetic after the person has been convicted to say, yes, I understand, I really deserve what I got. And from the bottom of my heart, I apologize. But the idiotic stance are people that are saying, let him apologize and it's over. And generally it's people that did not lose people that were close to them.
The problem is here. The UN doesn't consider gukurahundi as genocide.
Who said?
No, they haven't pronounced anything on gukurahundi as genocide.
Well, look. That exactly is sort of a statement that actually comes of not knowledge. UN is made, and is a global politics. UN is a body that has got this. If America says this, the Chinese will oppose it. If the Chinese say that, the Americans will oppose it. But the countries, including the United States of America, who have now said, yes, this was genocide, there are quite a few countries that are coming up. The trouble also is that an issue of genocide, particularly when it comes to Africa, it has got to be pushed by those people that suffered. Otherwise, the thing is that people were dying in Matabeleland, and because of the global politics, the West looked the other way around.
That's exactly what I'm saying.
Okay. Now, the declaration of that as a genocide is a process. It is for people like you and me to absolutely make sure that that is recognized. Now, you look at what is happening in Africa, whatever. If you look at the people being shot in the streets of Harare, it would never happen in any of the countries, but because people have now learned to judge us by different standards, and it is us, the Africans, to pull ourselves up by our bootstraps unless we push for more countries to accept that a genocide. Because if you look at, a murder, a killing is a crime. And if you go back, and I've actually referred you to my article in Zapo.org, that actually sort of shows you that what happened there fits every part, every section of whatever is called a genocide. And yet, on only one of the, I think, six sections there, if any of those was infringed, that would that would be acceptable as genocide. But with what happened in Matabeleland, it actually sort of fits all of them. So it is a genocide.
That is very interesting.
Yes.
What is ZAP doing with that? So that at least the UN can recognize it as a genocide. Because I think once it has been recognized by the UN, certain processes can then follow. What is ZAP doing?
Well, that's exactly. Now, one of the things, at some stage with my designation, but it's not out of the woods yet, it is to approach The Hague. Now, when I wrote to The Hague, the only slight bar was that they said that the International Criminal Court was actually set up in 2002, and that what I'm talking about, when they looked at it only in terms of the 5-year period, they said that it predated their existence. And they said also that Zimbabwe is not a signatory to that. But what we then looked at, we have all the evidence and it's ongoing. Yeah, of course, we're limited in resources, but it is a process that we're still on. And in fact, if you look at the reason